Hello, hello, hello. Today we're going to be talking about the Assyrians, one of my favorite empires of all time, because they are just so cruel and so mean and so nasty. You can't help but love them. And in the next lesson, we're going to take a look at the Persians, who are in many ways the complete opposite of the Assyrians. So we'll be talking about the Assyrian might and the Assyrian power. Now let's talk about their geography, kind of where they're coming from, what area of the world we are. It's in the Fertile Crescent. They're basically going to settle around the Tigris River, so they're Mesopotamians. They basically assimilate the culture of the Mesopotamians and the Babylonians that come before them. And the thing you got to remember about their geography is they had no really outside barriers or protection. So there's no outside defenses, so that's why they're going to have to go and form this military machine, which is going to go and basically run their empire. Now, in order to understand the Assyrians, you got to talk about their military a bit. Everything in Assyria is militaristic. Even their gods and goddesses, their head god and goddess are related to war. So let me use some military terms. First, the infantry. The infantry, these are ground troops. These are foot soldiers. They have archers and slingshot. The arrows for the archers can go up to 1,500 feet. They had a heavy archer who was clad in a scaled armor covering full body, including a helmet. This person was armed with a bow and sword. He also had a shield bearer to hold the arrows for him. They had a medium archer who basically was the same as the heavy archer, except for he didn't have a helmet. And they also had a light archer. And the light archer would move around without armor, so it allowed him to move quicker. The slingshots, basically the way you think about slingshot, like David and Goliath, the way they would work, they would go and throw their rocks or whatever, and then while people are blocking those, the archers would come in and start killing some people. The chariots, they're two-wheeled, highly mobile. In each chariot, you'll have a driver, an archer, and then two people holding the shield on the side. The idea is hit-and-run attacks. You're going to go and blast through the lines in these chariots and hopefully hit the ground. They would go and try to break up the infantry, create a gap, and then from there, that's where the Assyrians would go and be able to rout everybody. Now, the cavalry this is the division on horses. The cavalry is crucial to the Assyrians. And horses, you can't kind of underestimate the value of horses. If you didn't have horses, you wouldn't have the Assyrians, because the horses allow their attacks to be quick and allows it to be a highly mobile army. Initially, basically the way it worked is there would be two guys on two different horses. One guy would be shooting the arrows, and then the other guy would be holding the reins of his horse to kind of steady it. In addition, they would have lances as well to go in and lance people. Well, how do they get these horses? The main sources of horses, there's three of them. The first one, they basically go and steal them from the people that they would conquer. Another option, their second option, was that they would go and once they conquer people, it was kind of a form of a tax. And then a third one, there's actually a breeding program used by the Assyrians as well. How do they go and siege? How do they go and take over a different form of a city? These are walled city-states, so the idea is you have to get through the wall, or around the wall. So what they're going to do first, they'll encircle the city and try to cut off any food or water. This will come into play later with the Jews. And then they're going to go and build a ramp. They'll build what you see here in this picture, which is called a siege tower. They're going to go and do what they need to do. They might go and try to burrow under the wall. The siege tower, they'll roll up to the side of the wall and start shooting arrows. They'll try to starve the city, all that stuff. And then psychological warfare, the stuff that's my favorite from the Assyrians, they mess with people's mind. They used fear tactics, terrorism, those types of things to go and scare their opponents. If there was never a rebellion in the empire, they would go and just annihilate the people. They would flay people, impale, behead them, burn them alive, rip their eyes out, fingers, noses, ears cut off, rape the women, mutilate the men, place heads, arms, hands, lower lips on the side of the walls, skulls and noses on top of stakes. They would chop up people and feed them to the dogs. They'd actually go and they've been known for blinding people. And they would blind people, poke their eyes out, and send them down to the next city and tell them how bad the Assyrians were. So not bad people, or excuse me, not good people. The poem that we took a look at class, later written, obviously not at the time of the Assyrians, but by Lord Byron. The Assyrians came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, and the sheen of their spears were like stars on the sea, when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. So we took a look at that poem. It's one of my favorite poems. Now, they go and they conquer the city, and what are they going to do? Well, first they're going to go and colonize the land, meaning they're going to go and settle the land with their own Assyrian people. They're going to go send them in there. The idea here was to get a loyal power base. You get taxes, food, troops, all that stuff. The problem with this is they're establishing this imperial system, just like in Star Wars, the Empire, right? The evil empire. When you go and establish this imperial-style system where you're sending your rulers to be in control of the people that you conquered, the people that live there are going to become very resentful toward you as a ruler. So this ties into their other method that they're going to use, which is deportation. So they're going to go and basically, if they conquer your area, it's very common for the Assyrians to deport the people, shuffle them to another area that they conquered, and then take those people and move them to your area. It slices up the people. It's more psychological warfare, and it helps prevent rebellions. When they go and are involved in taking over the city, they're basically going to steal everything. They're looking more of a short-term strategy than a long-term strategy. They gain all the wealth they can. And basically, the people that they're taking over, rather than letting them share in the wealth of the empire, they're just taking all the wealth of the empire. So they establish a modern-day, what we call an empire, one of the first places to do that. It's a centralized administrative system that applies equally to all the conquered territories. What happens, the army comes annually, once a year, and takes away all the local resources. Then the king at the top has imperial servants below him. Then there's scribes that keep records of victories. Traders and craftsmen are kept in government-run programs. The capital's at Nineveh. You may have heard of that in the Bible. And eventually what's going to lead to their downfall is they're going to overexpand, and they're not going to trust mercenaries. They're not going to hire non-Assyrians in their army, and as they get spread too thin, that's going to lead to their downfall. So here's the Assyrian Empire at its largest, and as I said, the capital is there at Nineveh. Now, remember this? When we had the divided kingdom after Solomon, they go and we have the 10 tribes in the north, Israel, and then the 2 tribes in the south, Judah. And we talked about it, they split and all that stuff. Now, if you remember last time, I said both were taken over by the Assyrians. So now I'm going to go into more detail, and you'll fully appreciate who these people were that were attacking them. So in Israel, they're going to go, and you can read this in the Old Testament. They do not like the Assyrians that much. They're going to go and get routed. And this is going to be because they're going to be deported. That's how we get the 10 lost tribes of Israel. The people got deported, they got kicked out, and they're never going to be able to go and settle back in the homeland. Now, Judah's going to go. They're a bit better organized, I guess, and they're going to be able to fight off the Assyrians for a longer period of time. And we'll talk about how they technically don't conquer them, but they pretty much do. The first one is the Battle of Lachish. And this is a battle. Lachish is basically their second capital. It's Jerusalem's their first capital. Lachish is their second capital. And all the other cities in Judah had fallen except for Lachish. And the Assyrian leader, his name is Sennacherib. And then the Jewish leader at the time, his name is King Hezekiah. You may recognize that name. So these are the 2 leaders. In the Battle of Lachish, all the Jews get routed, they get deported, and they're absolutely defeated. The Bible makes no mention of this. It basically says Hezekiah did not serve Sennacherib, which is just total propaganda on their part. And Hezekiah is going to basically run with his tail between his legs to Jerusalem for the final battle between the Assyrians and the Jews. Now, when we go and look at this battle, it's kind of interesting because as historians, we've got to look and see where does the truth lie. And we look at these different primary sources, and they're different depending on who you read. So if you look at the Jewish kind of side, they're going to go and basically said, an angel of God comes one night, and 30,000 Assyrians come and just wipe out, 30,000 people that are Assyrians are wiped out by an angel of death. Couldn't get that out there. Prior to the battle, by the way, too, Sennacherib sends a letter to the Jews, and he basically says, your God won't protect you, because the Jews are going to say their God will, and he sends them a list of every other society that said their God would protect them against the Assyrians, and then what happened to them, kind of a slap in the face. So with the Battle of Jerusalem, Hezekiah is going to go and have to build what's called Hezekiah's Tunnel, a secret water tunnel that will allow water to come into the city, because like I said, one of the Assyrian tactics was to go and cut off water into the city. So according to the Jewish account, 30,000 Assyrians get knocked out by an angel of death. If you go and read the Assyrian count, though, They go and they say that Hezekiah was trapped in Jerusalem, quote, like a caged bird. And basically, they went and were paid off by the Jews. Maybe there were some people killed to some extent, maybe with some form of a plague, so maybe that's where the biblical account comes. But for the time, the Jews are going to hold Jerusalem. But as you know, what comes next after that is the Babylonian exile. So Babylon then is going to come over, take over from the Assyrians, and then kick out all the Jews out of Jerusalem. So here's actually a real siege ramp that they used at Lachish, where they would go and build these dirt ramps and then be able to roll up to the wall. In addition, this is the Lachish mural, which is at the British Museum. It's an Assyrian victory mural, and it shows the Assyrians conquering and then some of the Jews being deported. So here's some Assyrian archers, and then they're going and conquering up the side of the wall. You can pause this if you want to take a better look. Them going and fighting, climbing over the walls, and then you can actually see the Jews being deported, and they're proud of this. Hey, we're kicking these people out. It's a victory mural. In addition, some people being tortured here, the Jews getting kicked out, true Assyria, and some people going and basically offering, it's kind of difficult to see, but offering an offering up to Sennacherib. Hezekiah's tunnel, they actually opened it a few years ago. You can go see it as a tourist. Very claustrophobic-ish, so you can't be claustrophobic to be in there, but pretty cool that they actually found it was a real thing. Here's the link between Hezekiah's tunnel and the rest of Jerusalem. It totally zigzags because they weren't exactly sure where to go. They met on they built it from two sides and tried to meet in the middle. And then here's the pool. And then here's an example of what it looked like back then. So there you go. There are the Assyrians. And like I said, they're brutal. But they're going to go and establish the first idea of the empire. And it's important to you see the relationship now among the Assyrians and the Jews. And you fully appreciate what I was saying before about the 10 lost tribes and kind of these different kingdoms being taken over by the Assyrians.